Hello everyone, my name is David Geng, and today I'm trying to present the work that I have done for the final for class IT 533. So in this project that I have received this data set called U.S. Women's Labor Force Participation. So this is basically the data set that we can use to study about women's whether they work at home or what impact or what factors are impact women's income. So in this data set, there's a lot of attributes that we can use to make a good prediction model. So have that being said, let me go through my code. So as you can see on the screen, on the first right here, so you can see that the first step is to import the data from the original data source, and so I use Panda basically from Python language, and try to import that, and then just right here I'm looking at the data, the raw data, and then try to identify which attributes means what, and what are those variables exactly talking about, right? So just get familiar with the data first, and then after that I try to output the data, the format of data, try to understand what type of data are for each variable. Are they integers? Are they object? Are they float? That just try to understand that, and then come to the first question. So it's basically asking, if there are there is or there are class attributes. As what I use here, I try to look for because it's class attributes. I'm looking for the columns that has data type that is equal to object. So by doing that, I basically use a select the type object, and then it come out that there's two columns or two attributes that are categorical variables. So it's either yes or no, right? So one is work, the other is city. So basically, so that is the two class attributes that I found, and also that for the study, we can use either the work variable or the city variable to study whether we want to know if woman works at home or not, or we could also study whether they live in a big city or not. But for this purpose, I think for this analysis, I think it's better to set work as the target variable, so we can do a build model to predict who's actually working from at home, and what makes them work work from home, right? So is it like because of kids, because of education, because of income, things like that. So moving down, basically in this step, I'm just looking at the variables, the work variable, the distribution, how many says yes, how many says no, and also moving down to here, the second question, so is asking to list the minimum, max, min, mediums, mode, quantile 1, quantile 3, standard deviation for those listed attributes, like looking at wife's wage and also wife's education. So, and they basically what I'm doing here is that I'm looking at for the woman who has age 2 or less children. So as you can see, I'm looking at basically looking at education, looking at the wage, to just have those descriptions. Just look at their mean, their standard deviation, all things like that, right? So those basically are the things, the items I'm looking at, and also I'm looking at each individual, like looking at the wage and education by just looking at those measurements that was listed. So so basically that is what I did, and from the data that I from the output here, I found that basically wage and education, for the education, they have smaller standard deviation. So that means from one woman to the other woman, they have their education background are very similar. So that means if you look at individual data points, the woman, one woman, they're actually, the education of that woman is very close to the mean of everybody's education, right? So that's the interpretation of this. And of course, meaning that this means that pretty much everybody, as the data tells us, has about 12 years of education. Of course, there's more, some are more, some are less. But the more education, that brings more higher wage and also more income. So that's basically what I'm trying to figure out here. So so that is for question 2, and coming to question 3 here. So question 3 here basically asking for plotting, right? So we want to create some scatter plots against the target variable, which is the work variable here. And then what we're trying to do here is that looking at the work, whether they work at home or not, and then we plot it with we look at the wage, and then at the same time I color it based on their education level. So as you can see on here, the first plot here is showing that for the woman who has 2 or less children, they work, most of them actually work from home. But the thing is that for their wage, and if you look at their wage, that is associated with their education level. So the higher education, they have higher wage. And then if you look at the color, the wage, the education, the year of education, you can see that the yellow indicate that they have more years of education. That's why their wage is higher. So you can see that for both, regardless whether they're working from home or not, you can see that pattern. And that's the similar thing for the woman who has less, children that's more than 2. Even though we have 3 data points here, but it does show that the wage, the education level is a matter there. But in this case, because we only have 3 people, three women, right? So that tells and you see that the wage is 0. So maybe it's just because they have they have I would say it's because they have more children, and they probably tend to stay at home and take care of the children without working. So the wage probably is, as you can see, is 0. So coming to question 4 here is basically I basically choose 2 classifier. One is KNN, and the other one is is random forest to make the prediction. So basically, I made a split between the training data set and also the testing data set, 75% to 25%, and basically so KNN basically is is a algorithm that considered as the supervised learning, and also it's a classifier that predicts whether the woman is work home or not. As you can see here, on the training data set for the accuracies, we have on the training data set we have 0.93, and on the testing data set we have 0.8. So very good prediction, but there may be some overfitting problem, but that is something if we want to further improve the model, then that's something we should be focus on. And the confusion matrix is basically the number that I use to calculate the accuracies. And for random forest is the similar. Basically, is the similar type of approach. I use the random forest classifiers, and then make the prediction to set whether the work woman, whether they work at home or not, right? So the predictions come with a really good, perfect prediction. As you can see that from the confusion matrix, it's actually really good predictions. I just think that probably one or more predictors from this data set that really helps us to tell whether the person, whether the member, the woman is work from home or not. Very good predictor. That's why it come out 100% accuracies. But in reality, that's maybe not true. It's really hard to find out really perfect predictors. That's the case. And for question 5, basically using the testing data set. So use the testing data set generated and try to remove all the class attributes. So basically that's I drop the categorical variables and try to use the testing data set and try to put it in the k-means, right? Using k-means, that is my choice of doing this classifier, and I mean not classifier, clustering. So basically I did calculate use this elbow method and try to get the k, right? So I found out that k is at best is equal to 3. That's where it actually become flatter. There's so I basically use k-mean and also at the same time make the prediction, right? So here is basically the prediction, because it has more than 3 dimensions, so actually 3 dimensions, so it's easier to put on 2. So I basically use PCA to reduce the dimensions. So basically I come up with 3, so actually 2 groups. So this is really something that I found. As a result, basically what I can tell you here is that it does make perfect sense that education and also income makes a huge difference on whether to group the people. So and that's how I answer the question. And at the end, the last, so what kind of recommendation would I make to the government, right? So one thing is that put more money and give more free time to the woman, and put him in school and get more education. So that will bring up the wage and also the income for the family. So this is really good, and this is the value that I have from that I got from this model. So thank you very much, and this is all I have.